Peace and blessings, beautiful people. Peace and blessings. This is Empress Imani, and welcome to this episode of Sacred Love Lessons. This episode of Sacred Love Lessons, we're going to be talking about it's you. It's me. I am the one that I have been looking for. You are the one that you have been looking for. And this episode was inspired by the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. So I'll just recap the story in case you're not familiar or you don't remember. So we had this family. There was a boy and a girl, Hansel and Gretel. And then there was mom and dad, stepmom and dad. So the dad was a woodcutter. He didn't make a lot of money. They lived out in the woods, right? So I'm not really sure what the stepmother did. It didn't look like she was employed. She looked like she was really in charge of taking care of the children. So the stepmother, she was saying one night, because they had very little food, and I'm assuming she was speaking from a place of hunger. I think it was more than that, but we'll go with that for right now. And so she was telling the dad, hey, we need to get rid of these kids. They eat too much food and they need to go. And so the dad, he was like, no, these are my children. I love them. I really don't want to do that. Let's see what we can do to work it out. But she kept pushing and pushing. So finally, he gave in. I wanted to say something, but I'm going to leave it with that. The dad gave in to the stepmother, right? So Hansel and Gretel, they were still awake because they were so hungry they couldn't sleep. So they overheard what the evil stepmother said. So Gretel, she started crying, she started crying. And so Hansel, he told her, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. So Hansel, he sneaks outside and he collects these shiny white rocks that are shining in the moonlight, right? In the dark. He gets a whole bunch of those. So the next day, when the stepmother and the dad takes the children out deep into the woods, they woke them up really, really early, and they took them deep into the woods. And then they told them, okay, we're going to go chop wood. You stay here and just stay here until we come back. So the children were like, okay. Well, needless to say, the parents did not come back, and it's dark. So now Gretel, she's crying. She stayed crying. But anyway, she starts crying. She's afraid. And so Hansel, he calms her down and he tells her it's okay, that I had put out the rocks and we'll just follow the rocks back to the house. So they do. They follow the rocks back home, and oh my God, you guys, can you imagine the look on the evil stepmother's face when the kids show back up? So they show back up. The dad, he's elated. He's happy to see them. The stepmother, of course, she's disappointed because her plot has been foiled, right? So one day, the dad, he goes into town. He's something to do with his axe. He needs to get it fixed or something. He goes into town. He leaves the children with the evil stepmother. She takes the children out into the woods, further than before, really deep into the woods, and she leaves them. Now this time, Hansel was unable to collect the shiny white rocks. What he did was he left breadcrumbs, right? So they could follow the breadcrumbs back to the house. Unfortunately, when it got dark, they couldn't see. So he was like, well, we'll just wait until the morning, and then we'll follow the breadcrumbs back to the house. Well, the next day, they woke up. The breadcrumbs were gone because the animals, the birds, had come and eaten all the breadcrumbs. So now, Hansel and Gretel were lost in the woods, deep into the woods. So they started off trying to find their way back home. They had been in the woods for 3 whole days. They come upon this house. The house is made of gingerbread. They were so hungry, they started eating from the house. And it had all their favorite sweets and, all of that. And they just, without thinking, they just started eating from the house, right? So this old woman comes outside and she's very nice, very friendly, very welcoming. She's like, hey, come on in. They tell her they're hungry. She's like, come on in, I'll feed you. So she prepares a feast for these children. I mean, she's feeding them all kind of favorite everything. And then, she's giving them warm milk and she's just really nurturing and she's taking care of them, right? So they eat so much that Hansel, he has the itis. And you guys know what I mean when I say the itis. It's when you just eat so good, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, you just eat so good and then you just get sleepy afterward. Yes, Hansel had the itis. So what the witch did was while he was sleeping, she put him in this cage and she locked him up. And she told Gretel, I'm gonna eat your brother. Oh my God. So like all of that little nicety, all that, woo that she was showing when they first showed up, all broken and lost and hungry. Y'all, it was all a facade. So the next day she was like, nah, I'm eating you, player. We're gonna pump you up. We're gonna get you real. We're gonna fatten you up and I'm gonna eat you. That was the plan, right? So she ended up turning Gretel into a slave. She had the poor girl cooking, washing, cleaning, doing all kind of stuff, trying to fatten up the brother Hansel, feeding him every day, and then she would go check on him to see if he was gaining weight. Well, the old witch, she couldn't really see that well, so when she would go check on Hansel, he was smart. He would she would tell him to put his finger through the cage. He would put up a thin chicken bone. And she was like, okay, what the hell? Because I know we feeding you, but he just was not gaining any weight. So finally that went on for a period of time and she just couldn't take it anymore. She was like, I'm hungry. Fat or not, you getting eaten up in here. You finna be eating tomorrow, right? So the next day she tells Gretel to boil a big, huge pot of water. And so Gretel does, she prepares everything and she gets it ready. Now Gretel, she freaking out. Normally, under normal circumstances, you guys, Gretel would be over in the corner in the fetal position crying. But in this moment, she did not do that. She kept a level head. She did what the old witch told her to do. And so the old witch came back and she said, is the water boiling? And Gretel, I don't know, I'm really not tall enough to see inside the pot, so I can't tell if it's boiling or not. So the old witch, she disgusted because she actually have to get up off her butt, her lazy butt, and do some work. She gets a step stool to look inside the pot to see if it's boiling. When she does that, Gretel pushes her into the pot, the boiling hot water, and she puts the top on the pot. Of course, now the witch, the trap that she has set, that she had prepared for Hansel, she has now been ensnared in her own trap, right? So now the witch is dead. Gretel, she goes and she unlocks the cage and she lets Hansel out of the cage. And so as they're preparing to leave the gingerbread house, they look around and they find all of these gold coins and jewels. And so they load up as much as they could carry. They load up, right, with the treasure. They leave. They go through the woods. Finally, they come upon a part of the woods that looks familiar. And they're able to get back to their home, right? So when they show back up at the home, the dad, he's excited. He's happy to see them. They find out that the evil stepmother is gone. She died of hunger, y'all. Like, how much karma is that, right? She died of karma, of hunger, and she's gone. And so now the father, the kids show the dad that, the treasure and the gold coins that they found. And the three of them, they go buy food. They have more than enough to live off the rest of their life. So, in modern day time, it would be like, okay, maybe they hit the lottery. Maybe they had a windfall of money. There was an inheritance, a transference of wealth, however you want to put it, right? They blew up And they had more than enough food, more than enough money. They had more than what they needed for the rest of their life, right? And then, of course, the story says, and they lived happily ever after. So what do we take away from this story? I really want to just focus on Hansel and Gretel, and I'll just briefly cover the other three characters. Let's start with the dad. I was really disappointed with the dad. Like, he seemed like he was a good dude. You know, he was a woodcutter. He was hardworking. He really wanted to take care of his family and things of that nature. But also, it seemed like he was weak. I perceived him to be weak, that he would succumb to some woman that wasn't even the mother of the children, even if she was the mother, the biological mother, that he would just succumb to someone telling him, convincing him that he should leave his children out, abandon his children, right? And then just go off. I've seen where guys have been with the woman, had a family with this woman, and I've seen it in same sex too. Had a family with someone, and then for whatever reason, the two adults could not work it out. And when the relationship ended, then the other person who was leaving discarded the whole family, the children, the woman, whoever they were leaving, right? The other spouse or the other partner, just discarded the whole family, including the children. And then they go start a whole nother family as if the first family never existed, right? So I was really disappointed with the dad, you know, and I'm not going to make any excuses for him. I was disappointed with him. The evil stepmother. There's not enough words in my vocabulary to articulate how I feel about her. I just think she was just pure evil. Anyone that would do harm to children, whether you abandon them, whether you neglect them, whether you abuse them in any way, any person that would do harm to children, you're just pure evil in my book. So the karma that she received when she died of hunger at the end, I was more than happy about that. Okay. The old witch. Now, the old witch started off as an old, nice woman. And what I saw in this situation is that all that glitters is not gold, because she was real nice. Y'all come on in, get you a plate. You know the type. Come on in, get you a plate and let me feed you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But underneath that, you have to look deeper, right? And this is where your intuition come into play, because underneath the surface, that person is evil. And it turned out in this case, she really was. And I have experienced that in my personal life, where people present themselves with this mask, right? They present themselves like they want to help you, but underneath that, they're really jealous of you, envious of you. They want what you have. They want your light. And if they can't take it, then they want to stop you from getting your abundance, right? So I've seen that. Now let's move on to Hansel and Gretel. When they first started off at the beginning of the story, I thought Gretel, she's a child, right? And so it's okay, to cry. It's okay. But she cried quite a bit, like at the beginning. She was just always afraid. She seemed very emotional. So she was definitely in her cup energy, right? Hansel, he was more in his air energy, where he was thinking and he was taking action. He was embracing his masculine energy, like when he went out and got the rocks, and then they were able, because of that, they were able to find their way back home the first time. And even the second time, even though the breadcrumbs were eaten, he still had a plan, a strategy in place to get them back to where he needed to be. We saw their growth, though, even more. We saw them grow. We saw how Hansel grew, like by putting the chicken bone through the cage when the old witch was trying to check to see if he was getting fat. We saw where Gretel, her her emotional intelligence grew where she stopped crying, right? And then she started tapping into her air energy. She came up with a plan. And then she took action when she pushed the old witch into the pot and put the lid on it. So both of them, at the end of the day, had grown. They had developed life skills. They had balanced both their masculine and feminine energy. It was a beautiful thing to see them grow in the story in the midst of all of this trauma and devastation, right? And then the final thing that I loved about this story is the abundance that they received at the end. These poor children, they had gone through so much, but they had grown in advance. It was like they went through some kind of initiation of some sort, right? Because at the end, they were able to receive the harvest that they rightfully deserved. They received the money, they received the jewels, they received it all. And they was able to find their way back to the light, right? They were able to find their way back to the home. And then in the end, there had to be some forgiveness on the part of Hansel and Gretel to forgive their dad for what he had done, right? And to reconcile with him, and then to share in the bounty. So I just wanted to share this story with you, to just share these nuggets with you. If you are in a place where you feel like, oh my God, I am in the fire, I've gone, out of the frying pan into the fire, and I just, and you just don't know, okay? Tap into your energy. Balance both your feminine and your masculine energy. Tap into your air energy. Come up with a strategy, a plan, something that's viable, something that's feasible, so you can make a shift into your abundance, right? And I'm just going to leave it there. I hope this lesson has been of value to you. Don't forget to share it with your family, your friends, and on your social media. And until we speak again, be the light.